Okay. Well, I got a freebie today. What I need to remind you is about mystery, mysterion. You say, well, okay, I know you've all read ahead. You know that the word mysterion in your Greek is not in Hebrews. All right, I got it. You got it? But the word mysterion appears 22 times in the New Testament. The word ecclesia appears, I think it appears 12. Ecclesia, you know, is translated church. It's the Athenian democracy. But so I got 22 mysterions and I got 12 ecclesias. Which one do you think is more important, at least in New Testament writers? And I've mentioned this before to you. Okay, what gets written down in history? Does the mundane get written down in history? No. No. Does the stuff that everybody knows get written down in history? No, usually not. What gets written down in history?
The out of the ordinary, the unusual.
Yeah, the very unique, unusual. That's what gets written down. And you know that, but I'll give you even worse. Like, for example, nowadays we have video recorders, right? In fact, everybody has them on their phone, so you can record everything. So there's got to be, well, there are recordings of our church services. So in the future, someone could reproduce our church services based on the video reenactments, right? But let's say you didn't have any video. Or, you know, let's say you just had recording. Could you reproduce what happens in our sanctuary, in our services? Never. Couldn't happen. And the era when they recorded things, you know, remember, paper is very expensive, stuff's very expensive. So what is very interesting about this is this 22 times that it's mentioned doesn't mean that it's unique. It means that it's, what's that? Important. Yeah, it's an important factor. So even though Hebrews does not include the word mysterion, and this is the word, here's the word of the day, M-U-S-T-E-R-I-O-N, mysterion, we need to talk about it. Because, remember, Hebrews says it's written to Hebrews, but we've been discussing that it's not written just to Hebrews. It's obviously written to Romans, Greeks, Hebrews, the Jews, let's say Jews that happen to be in Alexandria. You know, we're guessing about Alexandria, but I think we're right on the money. And in Alexandria, the Egyptians. The Egyptians. Now, could you add to that list? Who else is around there? I'm just saying. I mean, do you remember in Jerusalem at Pentecost? I mean, we're a little ways from Pentecost, but we're going to get to Pentecost. Who was at Pentecost? And why were they there? That's an even better question. Why were they hanging around? What? Huh? Well, you have the Jews. You have the Jews from the diaspora. Remember, the Jewish law says, what you got to be at, or you'll lose your salvation forever in Judaism. You got to be at the 3 pilgrim festivals. Remember, there's 3 pilgrim festivals: Passover, the Passover, Passover, Yom Kippur, Tabernacles, and the other one is you got to be at the one that happens at Pentecost. The one that happens at Pentecost is the delivery of the loaves. Yeah.
You just made the statement, they need to be there or they lose their salvation forever.
Yep, forever.
I thought the prevalent thought was that when they died, it was over. So what does salvation mean to them?
Ah, okay, this is good. We have the 5, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I got it right, 5. There's Pharisees, there's Sadducees, there's Essenes, there's Zealots, and there's Teen Hodos. Which is what we're talking about, Teen Hodos. We're the ancestors, or we're the Teen Hodos dudes.
Of those five, which one is the prevalent belief?
Pharisees. Pharisees, Essenes, and Zealots. Probably the biggest is Pharisees. This is probably, I don't know, it's a large percentage. Sadducees are the priests. The Sadducees are the one that are considered orthodox. Hazy, crazy, and lazy, they call them today. That's their own usage. I'm not being pejorative, but the Jews themselves call themselves hazy, crazy, and lazy. The crazies are the orthodox. That's the Sadducees. The Sadducees are the priests. The Sadducees believe that when you died, there is no soul.
No resurrection.
That's why
There is no resurrection, you're gone. You're toast. You know, there ain't nothing. Ain't nothing.
Okay, was that the belief at the time of Jesus or the time of today?
Both.
Okay.
Those that believe that they are orthodox, the orthodox view, well, things have changed a little bit, but the crazies are the orthodox. And if you're purely orthodox, you believe that when you toast, there ain't nothing left. You're gone. You're gone.
So why would the festivals be important to them if the reason they go is to have their salvation?
It's a law. Because the law is following the law of God, and by following the law of God, everything will be good for you
While you're alive.
right now. Everything's good. You're good. It's a factor of not forever, but a factor of the moment. The Pharisees, Essenes, and Zealots are basically the same. The Essenes came out of the Sadducees directly, but for some reason the Essenes were really big time into Pharisaical kind of beliefs. And okay, why do you think that might happen? Who's controlling the temple? The Sadducees control the temple. These guys are the temple. And who controls the Sanhedrin? No, Sadducees. There are four Pharisees, which leaves 66 Sadducees. Okay? We know this. This is record. Big time records. Matter of fact, we know that one of the Pharisees is Gamaliel. There are only four Pharisees on the Sanhedrin. So the guys who control the belief structure in Jerusalem are the Sadducees. Okay, what's Pharisees control? More than a synagogue. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 schools of Judaism. The rabbinic schools. The rabbinic schools are the Alexandrian school, the Jerusalem school, the school of the Galil, and the Babylonian school. Who controls? Who controls all those schools? Pharisees. Pharisees control the synagogue, and they control the schools of Judaistic thought. Who wrote down the Mishnah and the Talmud?
The Pharisees.
The Pharisees, because what did the Sadducees think about the Talmud and Mishnah?
It wasn't in the law.
It wasn't in the law, wasn't important. The Sadducees are completely anti-Mishnah and Talmud. And guess who really was? Well, the Zealots aren't really very well educated. Let's just, the Zealots are kind of like the snowflakes, that call people fascists and then beat them up. I mean, talk about, the Zealots are kind of stupid. In my book, I put them, they're the blue shawls, are the Zealots. That's the Zealot party and the Essenes. The Essenes were basically very strong Pharisees, but they were being taken over by the Zealots, and we knew what happened to the Essenes, right? Masada? Remember Masada? Right? They're toast. They were also the ones that, with the Zealots, did the insurrection in 125 AD. They basically caused the entire destruction of Jerusalem, and that was the end of everything. So, this is your group. There's a little more details to it, but this is basically it. Now, the Teen Hodos, obviously, there's some interesting stuff about this, right? Teen Hodos. What do you know mostly about? Well, Pharisees is Hebrew or Greek?
I'd say they were Greek because they were more educated. That must
Well,
be-
no, I mean the name
Oh,
is,
Hebrew.
yeah, Ish. Yeah, Ish. but it is. It's Hebrew, but it's Ish. Because remember, synagogue is Greek. And Pharisee is a Hebrew name, but Greekized. Sadducees is a Hebrew name, Greekized, right? Essenes is a Hebrew name, Greekized. And Zealots are kind of Hebrew name, Greekized. Teen Hodos is
Greek.
Greek. Whoa! Not just Greek. It is from the Hebrew thought. It comes from Malachi. The way. The way. Now, what were the Pharisees big time into doing at this period of time? They were into proselytizing. Okay, you got to realize these are really important stuff. Maybe this is stuff that we don't teach you, you know. I think we ought to be teaching kids in 6th grade, you know, when they go to Sunday school. We don't teach this stuff. Originally, the original plan of the Hebrews when they went into the Promised Land was, what did they do to people that didn't believe were not Jews? What did they do?
They annihilated them.
They annihilated and conquered them, but that didn't exactly work out, right?
They left some.
Because they left some, and they believed because they left some, that what happened? What's that?
The Jewish religion was polluted.
They were polluted, and what happened to them?
They lost favor with God.
And what happened to them?
They were conquered, beat up, persecuted.
They were conquered first by the Assyrians, right? The Assyrians came in and conquered them and basically took over, and then the Babylonians took over, right?
But the belief was because they had turned away from God that God allowed this to happen. Or that was their punishment.
That was their punishment because and so their theory went from, okay, the first one was annihilation, and that didn't work. So their second theory, when they came back, and see, this is what we missed the point. Their second theory, when they came back they were allowed by the Babylonian, by Cyrus, actually, yeah,
It's really
the
the Medes and the Persians.
Medes and the Persians, because the Medes and Persians had taken over Babylon. So the Medes and the Persians, well, actually, the Babylonians allowed them, which one was which? Anyway, they allowed them to come back, and when they came back, they decided that they messed up the first time. So what then was their goal? To convert. So assimilation instead of annihilation. So they tried assimilation. And so assimilation meant that the Pharisees were hugely proselytizing. We don't realize this. They were hugely proselytizing. What was the problem with proselytization in this period?
Rome didn't allow it.
Rome did not allow what? Proselytizing, right? They allowed you to have your religion. The Romans were pretty tricky, okay? The Romans allowed you to keep your religion. Why did they do that?
To keep the peace.
They wanted to keep the peace, right? And plus, the Romans were believing what?
They just want you to pay taxes.
Well, I agree. I don't disagree. They just want you to pay taxes, kind of like our government, right? But really, the Romans, what did the Romans believe in? What were they focused in? That's a great question, right? And that's a segue. The big deal that they were focused in is they were worshiping the Greek gods. But the question is, how were they worshiping the Greek gods? What was going on? The Romans were big time into the Greek gods through the mysteries, the Mysterions. And so the Mysterions, the big deal about the Mysterions was, it wasn't they had a pantheonic paganism going on, right? But the Mysterions were part of that. And the really, really important thing that we got to realize is okay, every religion except two go through these steps. Animism, to pantheonic paganism, to Mysterion, to Gnosticism. And the big deal is, okay, Judaism started as animism. You knew that, right? The moon goddess from Ur. And somehow they got sidetracked by this god, this Jehovah dude. This Jehovah dude called Abraham out of the Ur of Chaldees, right? And out of the animism of his belief in the moon goddess, or whatever they believed in Ur of Chaldees, and made him his god. And so the Jewish people went from animism all the way to this whatever. It's something different. Yeah.
What about during the time of Noah? It was still animism at that point?
No, that's a wonderful question. And the thing is that, they went through animism, but for some reason Noah, right? Noah was focused on a Yahweh dude, right? But yet there are antecedents within there. For example, the first part of the Noah account, the Noah history, is, what's the first words in it? The angels came down and mated with humans, right? And created gods, men like gods. Remember the Amalekites, right? That's in your Bible, by the way. And that's the first exact step. And by the way, that indicates, what does that indicate? Pantheonic paganism, right? When you have gods going in, and what you're seeing is a transition. Because the transition between animism and pantheonic paganism is literate. You become literate. Literate. When you begin to become literate, you go from animism. Animism is the belief that there are spirits in everything, spirits in all living things, and that those spirits are what cause stuff to happen. So, for example, a brook has a living thing because it moves. And what makes it move? The spirit in the brook makes it move. Now, the next step between literary, you become philosophical. You invent philosophy, and then you invent science. So when you go from pantheonic paganism to Mysterion, you begin to realize that spirits in everything are not what causes the world to turn. You realize that there are natural things in the world, and that's where logic and philosophy comes in. Finally, in Gnosticism, it's science breeds Gnosticism. In science, you believe what?
Laws of nature.
The laws of nature, and you don't need God, right? Gnostics don't need God. Gnosticism is basically it's not atheism, but it's the idea that that the God of nature is basically a law of nature, and that all you need is these laws, and that if you understand the laws enough, you can become like God. That's Gnosticism in a nutshell. So, yeah, we see some antecedents, we see some evidence that at that time, Noah, there may have been some literary stuff, they may become literate in that period, but it's not assured, right? But it is interesting that the Noah accounts, for example, has this guy who believes in Yahweh enough to build an ark, right? So, yeah, it all fits in, but we know that the huge break became, right, when Abraham, basically God called Abraham out. And you notice God called other people out too prior to Abraham. It's just they didn't form this, there was an assumption, right, of belief. So, however you want to play it, Judaism is different than the regular function of belief. And you know that, for example, Hinduism, where's Hinduism in this picture?
Pantheonic paganism.
Yeah, to a degree. Actually, they haven't totally got out of animism, but yeah, they're kind of between the two. And remember, they invented Sanskrit, but they didn't invent philosophy until Buddha. What's Buddha? Buddhism, well, okay, I need to tell you before we get there, because I gave you some stuff in here about Mysterions, and I got more notes than I can even stand, so I guess...
Lionel, before you get started on that,
yeah.
Where the separation of and the roots of Islam is between the two brothers, correct?
Yeah, kinda, yeah.
Kinda, or
well,
because they both claim to have roots to Abraham.
Right, through Ishmael, yeah. Right, through his son his son who supposedly became the Arab nations, right. So,
So in the whole timeline of things, before the Prophet Muhammad, but where was this Was the split, I mean, historically, Ishmael and, his brother? Isaac?
Well, that's what Islam teaches, okay? That's what Mohammedanism teaches.
Okay, but from a historical perspective, you're trying to, I know you're looking at it from
You're saying
50,000 feet.
well, I think if we look, you're saying where does Islam fit on this thing? I think it'll become, well, okay, the fact that it's called Mohammedanism should immediately tell you what it is, or what it looks like, okay? What it stinks like in terms of religious form.
Stinks like.
Well, yeah. I don't mean that as a pejorative. I just mean as we look, what is, okay, early Christians did not call themselves Christians.
Right.
The Greeks called them Christians. And it's because of what we're going to discuss. They called themselves Teen Hodos, the way. See, we should be calling ourselves Teen Hodos today, except for this little cultural abnormality that happened. That actually wasn't a cultural abnormality. It's like Judy and I were talking today. She goes, it's kind of amazing how all these things, conspired with Jesus to make it happen at Passover that they crucified Christ. Well, touching your foot into the theological pool, well, Shazam, right? Why would that be? See? It's like, yeah, why? Why are these things the way they are? And I would say it's, okay, divine will. Divine will is trying to hurt us like cats in the right direction. See? But it's magical. It's magical. It's supernatural. It's amazing how it occurs. Okay? It's spiritual based, right? Because remember, I hope we're all good Greeks. Sarx, Psuke, Pneuma. Today the millennials don't believe in, what do they believe in? Sarx. Yeah, just Sarx. That's why they all have, that's why 50% of Americans have STDs, because they're all into Sarx. They need to apply a little Suke and Pneuma and we'd be a little bit better off, right? So, I don't know, Sarx, as the Greeks, quite, look, the biggest proof that you have that our society is becoming Gnostic and non-philosophical based, non-intellectually based, and non-logical based, is that today's kids and millennials, unless they're properly brought up somehow, do not believe in Suke or Pneuma. You're just a piece of flesh, and your brain cells firing is why you think. And it's like, look, even the Greeks 2,000 years ago had this figured out. But you can't. How much, ask them what they've read, right? It's Rachel Carlson, unfortunately. So anyway, and only because they were forced to read it, because it's not a really well-written book anyway. But in any case, and that's we have a discussion before. But let's look at this. This is really important because this fits into everything we're talking about. But ask questions because I think this is not, some of you have heard this before. I decided to do this because I think it's really critical to understanding this society or group. So hopefully we'll get a little bit in here and then we can get a little bit into Hebrews, more into
Are you
Hebrews.
going to touch on Buddhism?
I will.
Oh, okay.
But I think it'll become clear.
Okay.
It'll become clear. See, we have our little thing here, and we can track, every religion should be able to be tracked into this track, right? We should be able to put it into it. Or what it smells like, what it seems like. See? That's the trick. So, the first concept, the first idea is, remember, the Christians did not call themselves Christians. It says in Acts that the first time they were called Christians was by the Greeks at Antioch. That should make you wonder immediately. I mean, we're not taught to do this, but I love to look at things as mysteries. As a scientist, as an engineer, the first time when I see something, especially in Greek or any other text, and it says, the Greeks called them Christians at Antioch, what I ask is, why? Why would they call them Christians? And why the Greeks? I mean, it's obvious that they didn't call themselves Christians. Because did you know that in this period, to them, Christian is a pejorative. Christians is a pejorative. And I'll explain why. So, it all comes from this thing that's called the Mysterion. Mysterion, and I didn't explain the word, mysterion comes from muo. Muo. Muo means literally to shut the mouth. So if Greek, I mean, I love these words in foreign, like tais in French means to shut up, right? There's a word in every language, I see halt mal. Halt mal is a really not nice way of saying to shut up in German. It means, shut your animal mouth. In every language, there is something you tell your children, goodly or badly, to shut up. Muo is that. Muo means silence. And muo is the basis for mysterion. Literally, muo is the silence of the initiation rite. Now, what does that mean? The mysterions came out of pantheonic paganism because, like I told you, when you go into philosophy, you begin to realize that the world is no longer governed by spirits, by gods. And when you start realizing that, you begin to realize that there are phenomena that are outside the control of the gods. We realize that, right? Like gravity, for example. Gravity is a natural law. And you don't see anywhere where gravity doesn't follow certain laws and rules. How about F equals ma, right? F equals ma exists unless, for example, and here's the big thing, I'll go to C.S. Lewis. If a miracle occurs, does it come from inside or outside the creation?
Outside.
It has to come from outside the creation. Because a miracle is a subsumption, or a stop, or change in the natural laws of the universe. So this is a huge thing, right? Because the assumption, the problem with the Greek gods, and the Roman gods, and the Egyptian gods, who created? Who created? Remember this? Who created the original Greek gods?
The Titans.
The Titans. Who created the Titans? Well, they just became, right? They have a beginning and an end. The Titans became, and the Titans sat around and said, well, let's have sex and make, the universe and make the gods, right? And the Egyptian gods were kind of similar. Ooh, Hebrew is really different. In Hebrew, in the beginning was God, Elohim. Actually, Elohim, in the beginning was gods. Elohim, gods, plural. I'll put a big G to make everybody happy, but gods, plural, with a singular verb. And then it says that the Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, the Ruach of God, rested on the face of the waters, and God amarred. And the Jews always believed, basically until Christianity came around, that God had three parts, or three representative appendages? No, what's the word I'm looking for? Three personification. I'm looking for a different word, but that's even better than what I'm thinking. Had three aspects. Three aspects, but one person, right? Three aspects, but one person. So from the very beginning, the first words in the Hebrew is, and by the way, the Hebrew words are theo, hagos, pneuma, and logos, which to the Greeks, sark, suke, and pneuma, right? Suke, thought, that was basically nefesh, but that's the Amar, the creation, and God. And then you have sarx, the creation itself, Amar, and then you have pneuma, which is the Holy Spirit, right? The three aspects of God. It's very interesting. Logos, pneuma, the Spirit, and then theos, which you think was really kind of interesting, isn't it? Anyway, three aspects of God, one person. Always until Christianity. When Christianity came, What suddenly happened that changed the Jewish community and world? The Christian
Word became
community.
flesh and dwelt among us.
Yeah, and the Christian community said, look, the three aspects of God are seen in Jesus Christ, Holy Spirit, and God. And the Jews said, right? One God, only one. And that's when they changed their view. And by the way, I can't remember the Shema. What's the Shema? There's
one, Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one.
Yeah. Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one. The Shema did not become the Shema until after Christianity, basically. It was not even used until then. And that was basically to confront Christianity, which is interesting. Anyway, so the mysterion means the silence during the initiation. So mysterions are characterized, number one, by an initiation rite. So you always have an initiation rite. The person who is initiated into this is called a mystis. A mystis, one who has been initiated, literally one who keeps their mouth shut. Because a mystery, I guess that I'll point this out. Every mysterion, and okay, I need to tell you this, okay. Almost everybody who lived in Greek and Roman culture at this time, from the emperors down to the lowest slave, was a member of a mysterion. It's huge. It was a huge civic and religious thing. It was more than our churches. These groups were both civic groups and religious groups. They're religious groups because every mysterion had a mystery and a god or a leader. They were, okay, and here's the aha moment revelation. Every mysterion was named for their leader or their god. So, I have, let's just throw up one, the Pythagorean mysterion, whose leader was Pythagoras. Okay? Pythagoras. The Epicurean, and I'll write it out. A squared plus B squared equals C squared, which is the Pythagorean theorem related to every triangle ever, right? Pythagorean theorem for a right triangle. So the Pythagorean theorem works for every right triangle. That was the mystery of the Pythagorean mysterion. You also had, let's see, I was just, the Epicurean mysterion, whose founder was Epicurus. Basically, he was a Stoic, and we don't know what their mystery was. There's a lot of it. There's a bunch. I'm just going to mention some of the big ones. The Osiran mysterion. Take a guess? Osiris, who is a god. It's an Egyptian god that was appropriated by the Greek mysterion. Now, the Osiran mysterion is really cool. Anybody remember what it is? It's pi. It's pi. How about, let's see. We don't know what the Mithrin mysterion, Mithrin mysterion is Mithras. It was an appropriated god. Mithras is a very strange god. Mithras was a god that had his gonads cut off and basically then died and came back. And he is not a resurrected god. He was supposed to be a healed god. After Christ, he became a resurrected god, because remember I told you that you did not find resurrection in the mythos of anybody until after Christ. So Mithrin, we don't know what the Mithrin mysterion. The Demeter mysterion, Demeter is a very old mysterion. One of the earliest ones, the Demeter mysterion is Demeter. And in Demeter mysterion, we know what the mystery is. Somebody couldn't keep their mouth shut. They didn't move. But it was a box that contained a sword, a phallic symbol, and a seed. Remember who Demeter was, right? She was the goddess of spring that was taken by Pluto, right? Hades, down, and her mother was, or am I saying it right? No, Demeter was the goddess of nature, of the spring, summer, spring, whatever, of the harvest, right? And Demeter's daughter was taken down into, I can't remember her name. Anyway, the Demeter thing, remember, Demeter was also a goddess of war to a degree, and so the sword, she was a goddess of fertility, so the phallic symbol, and she was a goddess of the harvest, so therefore they had a piece of seed. Hers is the only way we know really for a fact what it was, because somebody let it out. And there are bunches. There's more and more. Now, the Greeks called Christians first at Antioch. Why?
Because they look like a Mysterion.
They look just like a Mysterion. And the other example was Buddhism is called Buddhism because it looks like a Mysterion. That's why it got its name. They didn't call Buddhism. Buddhism is not called Buddhism by the Hindus. Buddhism is called the Holy Way or something like that. It's you know, if you're Hindi, the path. Yeah, the path.
Sounds familiar.
Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Yeah. Buddhism has a specific name. How about Mohammedanism? Who's the founder? Yeah, and it calls itself Islam. But why is it called Mohammedanism? Well, when did it start? 600 AD. What did it look like?
Christianity.
Well, it looked like a little bit like Christianity, but it looks like a Mysterion. Look, okay.
But
Today-
in 600 AD, would they be still thinking about Mysterions? Or just using the same naming convention?
Let's talk about this. Now, what I did is I started at the beginning, and we've gotten to naming, okay? Let's start at the end a little bit, okay? Mysteries. Where do we hear about mysteries today? Where are the Mysterions today? There are Mysterions out there. Mysterions, the chief characteristic of a Mysterion is a Mysterion has a mystery to be revealed, and when you become an initiate, it's a secret initiation ceremony that eventually, after you learn, you are revealed the mystery. The mystery is revealed to you. Yes, sir.
I think they're all over the place. You got the Greek fraternity sorority system. You've got various clubs like Masons and so on and so forth.
Mormons.
Latter-day Saints. It's a cult.
Latter-day Saints, maybe. Well, okay, if you have a secret initiation ceremony and a mystery to be revealed, which, by the way, the Masons are big time, right? Secret initiation and a mystery. Mormons, secret initiation, secrets to be revealed, right? And you have levels of Mason, right? Levels of Mormons, right? Right? Okay? In college sororities and fraternities, yeah, they're kind of a perversion of the mystery system, but you are right on the money. Those are civic organizations that had originally a religious basis, and that's the reason they came out of the Greek system. That is absolutely correct. Now, where did those come from? The Masons is the greatest example of where this came from. What were the Masons?
Templars?
No, they were a guild.
Guild.
Craft?
All right.
A craft guild. The craft guilds, there used to be not just Masons, there used to be an enormous amount of craft guilds. The Masons are about the last ones living or last ones existent, but there were many, especially through the medieval period and the up into the Renaissance and even past the Renaissance period. The guild status did not really decrease until mercantilism, the Age of Enlightenment. You know, the age of before the Age of Enlightenment. What's the age of? Anyway, in about that period, we're talking about the end of the 1700s, about the 1600s, end of the 1700s. when the Age of Enlightenment, just before the Age of Enlightenment started to become very important, the guilds lasted. And by the way, we have huge amounts of these other organizations that some are still fragments left. You know, we see them and you can mention, you know them, right? And even some Christian and non-Christian organizations, you know, if they have a secret initiation and a mystery at the end, then you know that that's their aim, right? That's what they are. They are a mysterion. Okay? Even if they don't believe in a God, they're mysterion. So we're talking about, okay, at the very least from about the 1600s to at least like 500. The Mysterions started about 500 BC. 500 BC. So from 500 BC until about, let's say, the 1700s, that is the period of the Mysterions. Now, what else you remember? What are the mysteries? You can go to Oberammergau and see
Passion play.
the Passion Play, which is come on, you guys, you had to learn this. Didn't any of you guys study the mystery plays in Anglo-Saxon and early English? Do you remember this? Am I cracking some moss off? Did anybody study? English literature or American literature has a little bit in it, but British literature, English literature? Remember Anglo-Saxon literature? The first Anglo-Saxon literature was the mystery plays. There's still some out there. The shepherds, I won't say what they're called, the whatever shepherds. There was a whole bunch of mystery plays. And if you go to Italy, the mystery plays. If you look at any history book, the mystery plays. Who did the mystery plays? Who put on the mystery plays? The guilds. The mystery plays were to tell. And who was the primary dude of the mystery plays in the whole of Christianity? Do you remember? Saint Francis of Assisi. Do you remember that? Why? Why were the mystery plays so important?
People weren't literate.
People were not literate. And the mystery plays were all what kind of plays? They were
Bible stories.
They were Bible story religious plays. Exactly. They're Bible story religious plays that were given to the people at set periods. Where did that come from? Where did the mystery plays come from? What did the Greeks do?
Aesop's fables.
No. The Greeks.
Favorite.
Huh?
They have plays.
Part of the Greek religious festivals. There were two important festivals. The main one, and I don't remember the time, but if you look at my book, Second Mission, I talk about a period when one was given. But in 2 times during the year, they had competitions. And during the competitions, one drama was chosen and one comedy was chosen by the priests to be given in the cities. And the plays were graded, or the people graded the plays, but the plays were religious plays. They were religious plays given for the festival, the religious festivals by the Greeks. Now, when we read the plays like Frogs or what's his name, Oedipus Rex, you remember all these, right? You had to study them, I hope. When you read those plays, you said, well, they're not religious. Yeah, they were. They were reflections of the gods through the minds of the Greek people. And these were, people went to them as a religious thing. They paid like I think it was a denarius to get in. Anyway, it's in my book. But when they went to see the plays were religious organizations. They were mystery plays. And as the Greek society moved, they were given by the Mysterions. And then when Christianity came in, they were given by the guilds to educate the people in literacy. The reason that the Mysterions began to die out as we came into the 1700s was why? People began to become more literate and books became more available. Until 1826. In 1826, the world changed because in 1826, they began to make Bibles like crazy. The Mysterions began to die away and the mystery plays began to die away big time until we have remnants. Oberammergau. There are other mystery plays that are done in different parts of the world. You go to Italy, there's still a bunch of mystery plays. Look, this is a huge part of history. This is something that everybody did. That's why your kids aren't taught it. That's why you aren't taught it. Why? It was a common thing that everybody did, except in America. In America, because we're after these periods, we were not big time into the mystery plays and the mysterion kind of things. Although we have remnants. The remnants are the Masons. The Masons came out of the guilds. I'm surprised that Masons still don't do mystery plays. They still support the arts a lot. There's a reason for that. In any case, yeah, it's a good question.
When did formal education come into existence, with kids going off to school versus being taught at home?
The first public school was in Boston, Massachusetts, in 1836. In 1836 was also the year when they had the highest literacy measured in the 13 colonies, or in the United States of America.
Because didn't that have some type of effect as well? Because they didn't need to have the mysterions, the mystery plays to educate. They were getting a lot of that in school.
The mystery plays, by the way, the Puritan mystery plays were what? Anybody want to guess what the Puritan mystery plays became in America? Two things. The Puritan mystery plays. Anybody read the Scarlet Letter? What's the Scarlet Letter look like to you? It's a piece.
Of adultery.
Well, yeah, but it is a religious novel, very strongly religious novel, with a very strong religious meaning, right? How many British piece of literature do you find like that? How about South of Seven Gables? It's very similar. How about Moby Dick? All of that literature in America, religious nature type literature, came from the mystery plays, because the Puritans didn't practice mystery plays, they practiced sermons. Their thing was huge on sermons. And so you see a lot of the American philosophy, right? What's his name? One of my favorites. The guy who started the great philosopher, American philosopher. Anyway, a lot of American philosophy came out of the Puritan tradition. We want to slam the Puritans, but Harvard's taking the Puritans out of their song because they're not inclusive enough. It's like, dudes, the Puritans formed your university. And the Puritan ideas were what transformed from the mystery plays to basically American literature and sermons and philosophy. So, you know, these are things that are like kind of, self-evident and basic but guess what? They're not unique. And most of the professors and, your professors and professorettes, well, they don't even like that C.S. Lewis told you that modern literature began with the Bible, which it did, mixing, but yet that's one of his theses, which is a wonderful thesis and known across, the world. The first modern literature was the Bible. And that was the thesis from C.S. Lewis, which got him in trouble with everybody. But it's true if you've read his thesis. I mean, obvious stuff. Anyway, let's really quickly, I put it on your notes because I think it's really important to note. Look, here's the Mysterion. Admission to the community was by a rite of initiation. It's a secret rite. Solemn consecration held in secret, preceding by rites of purification, fasting, baptism, and confession. Delivery of the sacred symbol or signal. I baptize you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Okay? I take oil, right, and put it on the baptized. Vision of the deity, the revelation of the mystery. Christ is dead, Christ has died, Christ is risen, Christ will come again. That's based on the mystery of faith. Vesting of the robe of the deity. You're supposed to be baptized naked. And after you come up, in fact, the Orthodox Church still does this for babies and adults. They robe you in white robes. You adopt a new name. And we don't do this, but we give a baptismal name. Your baptismal name is the name you're baptized with, right? In many churches, you change. What happens when you join Islam? You
take an Arabic name.
Yeah, you take a Mohammedan, you take a name that's based in Islam, right? Christianity used to do the same thing. they would take a name that was a Christian, what they considered a Christian name, right? They changed your name.
Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali.
Bingo. Or what's his name? The guy who sang Cat
Stevens?
Stevens. Yeah, all those guys.
Oh.
The difference, the personal relationship with the deity was attained through a sacred meal. They ate holy food by eating the deity. Therefore, it became a deity. They had a revelation of the mystery. Look at Jewish and Christian sacred meals. They included hand washing, lighting lamps, blessing, breaking the bread, blessing a cup of wine. The bread and the wine of Jewish meals did not symbolize the body and blood of their God. Likewise, the Last Supper mentioned in Mark was a common Jewish sacred meal. Jesus himself, well, you know, you think about it yourself. Why would Jesus want to announce that this is my body and this is my blood? That makes it look like a mysterium. Doesn't it? Why would, you have baptism. If you have baptism, it looks like a mysterion. The big difference is, number one, Christian did not do their rites in secret. Not to begin with. Right? They didn't do the baptisms. They didn't do their initiations in secret. And guess what? They told you the mystery right away. Christ has died, Christ has risen, and Christ will come again. And why was this such a big deal? It was a big deal because it was true. Everybody, okay, whether you want to acknowledge it or not, I know you do, but whether the world wants to acknowledge it or not, right? In that period, they had witnesses that said that this Jesus guy died on a Roman cross and came back to life, right? That's why they invented a word, resurrection. That's why they invented a whole thing. What else could touch the world except that? And the big deal was this Christianity thing, this Teenotos thing, looked exactly like a mysterion. Except it wasn't a mysterion. And it still isn't a mysterion. But you notice what some groups have done, right? And I'm not going to pound them too much. Because of what they did, it did what? It spread it. Yeah, it spread like wildfire. Not only did it spread it, but look at what the successful religious groups today do. Like Mohammedanism. Looks like a mysterion. Well, we know that Muhammad went to Jerusalem looking for, he was trying to develop a religion. Literally, that's what he said. He couldn't write, he was illiterate. But he went and he borrowed stuff from the Jews and the Christians and put that into Islam. And Islam is a created religion that is a mysterion. Looks very much like a mysterion. They have very similar type mysterion things. You notice that they do have mysteries, right? To get to the mysteries, you have to go on a hajj. You have pilgrimage, right?
What about the psychological? I mean, people want to, if you want to indoctrinate people to follow a religion or something, you need to have something that they can latch on to psychologically. And Mysterians having a mystery, having a secret that they're keeping from someone else, moving up in the levels is all kind of a psychological way to draw people in.
I agree. As a matter of fact, the guilds really did have a mystery. What was the mystery of the guilds? What's that?
And to create loyalty by
Right.
keeping that secret.
Yeah, but what did the guilds have that they wanted as their mystery to keep secret?
Whatever their
Yeah, their technology, their techniques, the way that they did their like, for example, the goldsmiths or the what do you call it? The guys who
Masons.
the Masons, but I'm thinking about the guys who the blacksmiths, right? The blacksmith guild, the guilds would keep their secrets because those were mysteries. And you notice how they came out of Christianity and had a huge force in Christianity? So there are reasons sometimes to keep mysteries and secrets civically, right? And that's why they were so prevalent. Until Books became available to everyone, and then what happened?
You can read about it.
Technology explosion. You can't keep secret things that are technologically, but you realize why they exist. The point I want to make to you is this. Number one, you can't understand the first century without understanding mysterions and mysteries. You can't. It is outside of the scope of any understanding. You've also got to realize how deeply how deeply these are in our cultures, and not just our cultures. Buddhism comes out of, is a mysterion. Looks like a mysterion, smells like a mysterion, is a mysterion. Christianity looks like a mysterion. Today we don't think about mysterions, but there is a huge difference between, what is the difference between Christianity and every other religion?
Secrets are all known.
The secrets are all known, and there's another thing too.
It's the only God that loves people.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. Other groups would argue with you on that. They would also argue about, the Revelation, because they have their Revelation, the Book of Mormon, the Book of this, the Book of that. The thing that makes a difference is Christianity is the only historically based, and that's why I don't even call it a religion. Religion is man's ideas about God, right? Where Christianity is not man's ideas about God, but rather the history of a revelation that God made. And even saying that is touching the theological pool. The thing that made the Greeks so excited was one thing. This guy rose from the dead. All right? If that didn't happen, there would be no Christianity. Christianity would just be a silly, belief in philosophy or ideas. But the fact that God supposedly came to earth, became incarnate, right? And then died, and then rose again. See, that's historical fact.
Could you argue that the whole Greek mythos was a contrived, man-made mythos, but Christianity differed in that it was discovered. It wasn't something somebody thought up and eventually
It was witnessed.
disseminated.
It was witnessed. And the answer to that is this is what I'll leave you with. Okay, that's a beautiful observation, and this is what I'll leave you with. You notice, Mysterion philosophy. What was the philosophical difference that when the Greeks heard it, that blew them away? They said, look, this isn't something I have to believe, it's something I am convinced of by a logical argument. The whole thing we've been talking about this whole time is this logos to telos. As a Greek person, I don't have to suspend my logical thinking to know about this Jesus guy. I just have to not believe, but be convinced. And once I'm convinced, that's it, right? Christ has died, Christ has risen, Christ will come again. What a beautiful message. Thank you, Father, for your word. We pray you look after us this week. In your name we pray, amen.
Are you ready?